recently there was a very popular post on the r/gamedev subreddit that kind of is thanks to us. You're welcome, guys, which is titled I Hate Game Dev YouTubers. And, you know, these posts, they happen more often, but why do I say thanks to us? The OP in this case directly decided to call us out of like, hey, bite me is the reason I made this post, lol. I think this post has some issues with it, but I'm not talking here about this post because that's kind of the problem. If I were to make a reaction video to every single time someone wrote a post about how they hate us or how they hate Game Dev YouTubers in general, then I would be making these videos basically every month or something. And I think that is more what I want to talk about. Why do people hate Game Dev YouTubers this much? Because clearly people see it, but there's still a very vocal group of people who are talking about how they absolutely despise Game Dev YouTubers. So I want to talk a bit more also about why are there no successful Game Dev YouTubers? And the answer to that comes down to this graph basically, which is the revenue distribution of all games on Steam released after 2020. Because I think that's a realistic number to take, like you don't need advice from someone who released during Steam Greenlight. And suddenly, if you're looking to get advice from people who have made more than $10,000 from their game, let's say, which isn't even an immensely high number, you have just reduced 85% of the total game dev population. Think about that. 85% of game developers do not reach over 10k with their game. But that also means that if you take 100 YouTubers, let's say, it's a purely random sample, 100 people who are making games and also want to do YouTube, well, 85% of them will never reach that standard of success that you're looking for. Now, why do I say this? Because this statistic also kind of ties into the whole story of why are there no successful game dev YouTubers? Because at the end of the day, posts like this are the reason why there are no successful game dev YouTubers. Now, what do I mean by this? It's about understanding incentives, basically. What is the incentive for me as a non-existing YouTuber, like back when we first started, to make videos? Well, the incentive was, it's gonna give me some marketing, or it's gonna give me some money or whatever. You know, the reward was there for me to start doing YouTube. The problem is if you're a game dev and you've made $100,000 with your game or whatever, what is the incentive for you to start posting content and to start talking about all of your secrets and all of that about how to make games and all of that, your things basically? There is none, because it doesn't matter. You get people like this, like IC Emphasis 6204, who will hate you regardless, who will never believe you. And at that point, making YouTube videos, for the most part, there is no incentive for you anymore. Because one, you get a bunch of people who are angry writing mean comments. And two, you're just getting way more value, time-wise, from working on your game versus making YouTube videos. You see this actually with a lot of developers where once they've released a successful game, they kind of, you know, fade into the background. My favorite example of this is Play with Versifer, who released Backpack Battles, which has made like $10 million or something at this point. It's like, do you really think they have a financial incentive to go back to Godot tutorials? I don't think so, honestly. Some other examples, of course, Scientia Ludos, which is by the Choo Choo Charles and Cuffbus developer. Do you really think that he has an incentive to go and upload back on there when all he's going to get is hundreds of comments telling him about how he's a bad game developer because of how Cuffbus failed, even though he is still raking in more money probably every month than you're making in a year? Also probably very little incentive. It keeps going. There's other YouTubers that maybe I see this coming as well, like Colin Radical, for example, who just released Desktop Defender, once again made over 100k at this point, and sure, they will still upload some videos. They will upload the occasional flex of like, I made a game and it made $1 million. Here's how I did it. Or they'll go on a podcast here and there. But the actual, honest-to-God, game dev YouTuber as a career almost is inherently poised to only be filled with bad or middling developers. Now, why do beginning game developers also strongly dislike game dev YouTubers? Well, when they get started, you're gonna love game developers. And I've seen this with our audience as well. I read the Reddit posts where they complain about game developers, where it's like, I used to watch Bite Me, but now I don't like them anymore and I think they're grifters or whatever. It is because how you approach game development YouTube. I think that's a big problem as well that I want to talk about here, where I feel like the mistake is you're trying to find certainty in an industry that is notorious right now for having zero fucking certainty, zero standards, zero stability of what does make money, what doesn't make money, what's fine success, what's the best marketing advice. It's all different for other people. And if you go into game development, treating game dev YouTubers like kind of a blueprint or a recipe to follow to find success, well, you're going to release those first few shitty games and they're not gonna get any success, and that's gonna be deserved because, like I said, they are your first few shitty games that shouldn't belong on Steam at that point yet. And then we get to that psychological point, and probably some people are gonna flame for me, but I believe this: you're just too scared to blame yourself or to have the ego to realize that, hey, maybe I need to get better at this on my own pace, slowly. And instead, it's easier to point that this game dev YouTuber, he told me to do all of these things and I did it and my game still failed. He's a liar, he's a scammer. And that is kind of the problem you have here, where you then start building resentment to them. And it's kind of the life cycle of someone who watches game development. And the good thing is you're gonna wash out of game development anyway, because you're clearly not made for it. But if you're a beginner, a lot of beginners aren't looking for advice, but they're looking for guarantees, is more what I would say, where there is no guarantee. I cannot promise you that there is a 10-step blueprint or you can buy my course or whatever and you're gonna make it 6 figures with just a demo. That is not a thing, unfortunately. Even if I don't even promise you that you're gonna make 6 figures or whatever, I just show you what's it like when we make our games and what are the things that we learn about it. So, okay, Martix, you say that game dev YouTubers aren't something good to look at if you're looking for the steps of making a successful game, but why should I even watch you then is maybe the question. Why should you care about a YouTube channel like me or any of the other like hundreds of game dev YouTube channels out there on YouTube? I think game development is still good for quite a bunch of things. I think a very big one that I also enjoy them for is motivation. I think that is the very good thing. You can see someone else moving forward. It's kind of like an accountability buddy that you have a parasocial relationship with, where every week you can see them upload a new devlog or you can see them upload a new video. And my hope is that it kind of inspires you to see like, hey, this guy is making really good progress in a month or whatever. I feel like I should be able to do this as well. You kind of get that running partner. If you go into game dev all alone and you don't have those points to compare to of like what are other people doing, it's going to go slower. And of course, a real accountability buddy where you have someone else that you meet with every week is going to be better. But let's be honest, these are harder to find. You have to be social for them. You have to talk to people. Whereas if you just watch game dev YouTubers and you can see, you know, what is the whole progress, seeing them grow is something that's extremely inspiring and motivational, I would say as well. Something else that you can learn from these game dev YouTubers is more of the visibility in how do you actually make a game apart from the sponsored, like, here are all the tools I really use in a day-to-day life working as a game developer, but more of like, what are their design philosophies? What are their workflows? How do they go for their project management and all of that? And maybe YouTube isn't the best, but I think a better way to find this is actually by watching live streams of game developers. Sure, it's a very long piece of content, but you can't really pretend like, oh, I really use Monday.com every single day for my game, because that is the real game development stuff. I think there is a lot of stuff you can learn there as well of like, what does someone else think game design wise, game philosophy wise, and just see how do they navigate the engine? How do they navigate problems when they arise? I think that is something that you really can learn a lot from as well. I think it's a skill that is very powerful. Learning how to solve problems, learning how to deal with certain things. And that is something that by just watching other people do it, once again, you're probably going to pick up some good pieces of advice there. And maybe the most, controversial, not controversial, but like rude statement is you can see other people screw up and learn from that. And I think that is a really powerful thing. This is kind of a weird story because I didn't fully understand this until I heard this story from another game dev YouTuber called Brano. He's a bit smaller than us and I kind of like how raw and unfiltered he is, where in a video he talked about how our failure kind of told him a lesson in the terms of Songs of Everjade. So Songs of Everjade was the second game we've ever made. I'll put up some gameplay footage. And looking back at this game, I'm now like, why did we decide this was a good idea? But 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I don't know how long it's been at this point, we were like 100% believing that this was going to be the next big thing. We were going to be rivaling Hades and whatever. And by having that outsider third person's perspective view of like, you can be like, hey, this game is absolute dog shit. But for some reason, these developers, they just don't seem to realize it. You also can become more aware of like, hey, maybe this also applies to me. Maybe I need to think about this as well. Do I have that same thing? Am I working on my own version of Songs of Everjade? A game that a third party would look at and be like, dude, you're doomed. Just stop working on it. That once again, I am very blinded by as well. These are things that YouTubers can help you in realizing. It's kind of a self-discovery part maybe. But this is why I do like watching them as well, because you get all of these different perspectives, you get all of these different ideas that you can learn from. Now, what shouldn't you watch game dev YouTube for? I would say two main things. One, if you're just looking for game dev success formulas. You see this with certain game development podcasts, because every YouTuber apparently is making podcasts at this point, where they talk and they invite these people who have made successful games and they ask them basically like, what's the secret to success? And then one of them is going to say, oh, TikTok shorts. And then the other one is going to say, oh, joining game events. And all of them have different ideas and different advices of what makes a successful game. The problem is, like I mentioned before, game development is very different for every single person. And if you're looking to find a success formula, it isn't there. It is different for every person. It's different for every studio. So simply watching videos that are like the secret way to find success in game development is once again going to only lead to disappointment, because it doesn't really exist. At the end of the day, I would approach most of game development YouTube with more of an entertainment than an education approach at the end of the day. Even our most popular videos, like the tier list of like how to make money with your game studio or what's the best genres to make. And you just need to understand that, because that is how YouTube works. It is mainly an entertainment platform for most people, not a hardcore education platform. And I think the second thing that especially game dev YouTube is horrible at, I would say, is long-term strategy and advice. You can find videos about how to make a game. Absolutely. Finding videos about how to run a game dev studio is just something that I think is so underdeveloped and non-existent almost on the game dev YouTube environment that I wouldn't even try to bother for it. So now you may be wondering, what do I watch myself? Because I think that is an interesting one as well. I, for the most part, don't watch other game dev content creators, because I'm gonna be honest, maybe this is ego, I'm not a beginner anymore. I don't need to watch motivation videos of like people working every single day on their game and all of that. I kind of have that stuff down now. I've been doing this thing full time for almost 2 years at this point, and I've been making hundreds of videos along the way myself. Instead, I kind of watch more videos that focus on a specific single topic. Instead of looking for videos from game developers talking about motivation, I just watch YouTubers that are only talking about motivation, basically, like hyper specific, or like how to work harder, how to do deep work or whatever, more of the general productivity YouTubers. And if I'm looking at more like business side stuff, like how do I actually make this sustainable in the long term? Like I said, game dev is very underdeveloped in this aspect, but I think you can learn a lot from other people on small business YouTube is what I like to call it, where I like to watch videos of like people who run pottery studios, or like they have their own little apparel store, or they run a photography business or whatever, because I think this is a niche that is way more evolved in also justifying and normalizing talking about money. I think that is a very big problem as well that game development has, is you don't talk about money unless you've made $1 million or whatever, because otherwise it's not sexy, and you get all of these posts by people on Reddit talking about, hey, if you're not making any money, what are you doing on YouTube? I think those are my advices. If you want to look at like more content that is actually helpful, look at that stuff. Don't look at game development YouTube as much. Game dev YouTube, you just look at it to get inspired, to get motivated, and also then just to get entertained, I would say, and kind of feel like, you know, you're doing something productive. Now, one warning here, if you think that game development YouTube is filled with scams and grifters and courses and masterclasses and all of that, the rest of YouTube is 10 times worse. So you do sometimes need to figure out, okay, is this an actual good, valuable channel when you're looking at like these more business channels, or are they just trying to sell me into their $5,000 coaching programs? That's the one downside I have here with game development, because it is so underdeveloped in comparison. People are trying to sell you way less stuff, except like their games. So that is one thing that I would keep in mind. At the end of the day, I just want to say that you shouldn't idolize me. You shouldn't idolize other game developers. I don't think anyone really does. I don't know fully, but I don't think you should dismiss me either. You shouldn't dismiss me. You shouldn't dismiss any other game dev YouTubers or anyone just in general, whether they have never released a game or they've released 10 games that all made $10 million. There's always something that you can still learn from it. I'm a peer. I'm not your teacher. I am just talking to you as I would talk to anyone else. If you came up to me in like an event, for example, I will talk the exact same way. This is how I am in real life as well. I just want to share what has worked for me and what hasn't. And with YouTube, you have this thing of now, okay, instead of talking to one other person directly, I'm talking to 10,000 people or even more sometimes. So don't try to follow just someone's blueprint of here's how we made $1 million game, but just look at what worked for them. steal that and discard everything else that you don't think is applicable, that you don't think applies, or that you just don't think is good pieces of advice. But if your expectation is to only learn from six-figure developers, then unfortunately you're gonna have to wait probably multiple years between their uploads if you want to learn from that. So those are a bit of my thoughts on Game Dev YouTube. Honestly, I like Game Dev YouTube to a certain degree. I think there are, like I said, some problems that I have with it personally, which is like the fact that it's so underdeveloped in the business aspect. That is something that I'm trying to change as well by being more open about where do we find our money. If you are interested in it, there's a video over there, one of these ways, where you can find more about like, hey, here's how we made all of our money to this day, our entire studio basically. Where does it come from? How do we do it? And some of the thoughts behind it. I want to be more open with this because I want to be that change, because I see it in all of these other niches and I think it's very valuable. So if that's something that interests you, be sure to head down below and subscribe, because we upload a video every week where we talk about more of the studio related topics and less about the individual game specific ones, because I think that is a very important thing. Everyone can make a game, but not everyone can run a studio, and I want to help you with being able to do it. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!